Welcome to Inktober 2025 Zentangle edition here at the Tangles and Toons channel. I have to admit, I was excited to do this, but I didn't think it was going to happen. In fact, I may be late getting the first couple parts of this series out. I do apologize if that's what happens, because right now is day one and I'm still working on the details. Nevertheless, this is an exciting opportunity to share this event with those of you who are new or old pros at it. I usually participate in the Inktober event myself just because I enjoy the opportunity that it provides to challenge myself or to investigate new tangles, new patterns, or try new things with old ones. But the best part for me is that my wife and I get to draw together. This time of year, as the weather has changed from the oppressive heat of summer, we love sitting out on our porch and enjoying the fresh air and just drawing together by sunlight. And it's really a wonderful time, something that we've enjoyed together for years and years. And the Inktober event provides the perfect opportunity for that. But if I record the videos, we couldn't do that. But my wife has kindly agreed to join with me here in the studio and to draw each session, each daily Tangles together with me while we're filming. Now, she prefers not to be on camera, so she won't be in the video itself and showing her drawing skills. But we will share her drawing together with my own at the end of each day so that you can see our progress together and how they differ, even though we're following the same prompts and so forth. That's just kind of a fun part of Zentangle as well. So this year for the Inktober Zentangle project, I've decided to use a full sheet of paper. This is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I'm setting it here in the landscape mode. I normally use tiles of different sizes, the bijou tiles, the standard 3.5-inch tiles, and so on, but just decided to do something a little different this year, and I'm going to capture all of the tangles for the whole month on this single sheet of paper. And so I want to set up in our preparation today a little bit of preliminary work for my paper layout. So I've already marked here with a very light cross or X, if you want to think of it that way, on my page here, just indicating the center of my sheet so that I can start there. And I want to draw a little nameplate that indicates Inktober 2025 and maybe some other elements if I decide to include that. So that's what we're going to work on in this video, is the preparation of our work surface for the rest of the month's tangles. So the first thing I want to do here is do some lettering. I want to put the word Inktober here. Not terribly original, obviously, but that's what I'd like to do. And so we're going to be drawing that. I'm going to just use some standard block letters, nothing fancy or spectacular, just a little bit of a playful approach here. So I'm going to do the I here. I'm using a pencil to sketch this out so that my placement and spacing, I can correct that a little bit if I'd like to. And I'm using all caps for the word ink, and then I'll use lowercase in the same style for the tober, so we'll get a kind of a little more stylized impression here. So I'm using this common block format that's got I think, just a fun look to it. So it's easy to do. So we're just using a very simple process and laying these letters out right where we think they should go. So there we have ink. And let me zoom in. I don't think you can even see that there. There we go. And I'm going to ink this in, of course. The only reason I'm using pencil here in Inktober is because I want to ensure my placement and the dimensions and so on are good, since I'll only get one shot at this beginning. So now I'm going to go to the lowercase letters and do the similar style, but just in that lowercase. And you'll see how this all comes together here. I'm just checking my letter references here in between because I Don't remember exactly. I don't do a lot of block lettering like this. So this is just kind of a fun way to try something different for me too. Alright, I think that looks pretty good for this basic layout. It doesn't have to be perfectly centered. I just want it on the page here in the right spot. And then we're going to write these numbers here down below. Now, because this is the Tangles and Toons channel, I can't just worry about tangles. I want to also include some toon elements here, at least in my nameplate. So what I'm going to do is draw a big old pumpkin here over on the left of my numbers and such. And I'm going to have it overlap a little bit there. And of course we'll ink all this in, and we'll add any necessary shading to the process. This is just our prep work for the upcoming month of Tangles. And what if we had a nice little sheaf of corn husks or something here? What might that look like sticking out behind? Just something to add little details to. And now I can't have an opportunity here for drawing for October, the month of Halloween, without including some sort of little ghoulish thing. So let's see about, can we add a little skull or something over here on the other side of our work. So putting it right there. Don't like my letters creeping up on me there. There we go. So let's see here. We're going to draw what Halloween thing is complete without a skull, right? So we're going to kind of put one right around in this area. So I'm drawing a little placement shape there. It's going to guide where things go. And you don't have to do this on yours if you don't want to. This is just something that I get a kick out of, so I like to do the cartoony, monstery kind of stuff. You know that. I've talked about that on this channel. So we're going to just put some cartoon type elements here. Just something like that. When we ink it in, that'll just be sitting there. Adding to our silliness here, or at least my silliness. With that, we're going to start inking. So I'm going to start with these letters here. And I'm just using an 01 micron, so a nice fine point. And these are definitely going to have the look of hand letters in the sense that they're not going to be perfectly crisp and clear, or clean, I should say. They're going to have their own wonkiness to them, but that's okay. That's kind of what I prefer when I'm doing hand art. I want it to look like hand art. I've talked about that in the past. If I wanted to do computerized or digital versions of something, I certainly can. There's no shame or problem in that, but I like my drawing to look like a drawing, not like a photograph or a digital component of some kind. So I'm just inking these in, and then we'll add some details here. Trying to keep the letters consistently sized, of course, and want them to look like they belong in the layout, but not worried about perfection or anything like that. You know me, that's my common thing, to tell you don't worry about being perfect. If you're stressed out about being ultra precise and oh my gosh, my angles aren't perfect and so on. Now there are times, let me just separate my thought here for a minute. There are times when precision and ultra accuracy in our angles and details is absolutely critical in artwork. I don't mean to imply that anytime you do art you can just forget the details. I just mean to say when we're doing this kind of hand-drawn artwork that is non-representational and we're just having fun with it, we just don't need to get bogged down and stress ourselves out with those kinds of details. Some people, if they make one little, what they consider to be an error in their drawing, they'll just trash the whole thing and start all over. And maybe, like I said, in a given context, maybe that's going to be something you need to do. But here in Zentangle and doing art for the pleasure of doing it, even if you're sharing it with others or whatever, just relax and enjoy the process. That's my simple, repetitive advice that I say often on this channel. Alright, so we have those basic components in place. Now I want to add just something on these letters to make them a little more interesting. I'm going to turn my paper sideways or at an angle so that it's easier for me, and I'm going to create some hatching marks or just lines that go across these thick stems, if you will, or the wide pieces of my letters to help distinguish them from those thin pieces and just give us a little more, what am I trying to say? Give us a little more substance to these letters. You could also just ink it in completely in these areas and turn it black if you need boldness, but this is the nameplate for our drawing, and I want the tangles, once we start adding them, I want them to take center stage. This is just kind of the label. So I don't necessarily want this to be so bold and black that it just steals the show. Nothing wrong if you do ink it or color it. I thought of actually coloring this with multiple colors, but again I felt, wow, that's going to really steal the attention away from my black and white tangles as we go throughout the month. So I'm going to eliminate or not use the color, and I prefer, as I mentioned, to not ink this to keep it from looking overly bold and drawing attention. What I might do is a 3D look to this. Let's see, let's try that. Let me add just some little ink shadows or shadow areas here to my numbers. It may seem contradictory to what I just said about not wanting to be bold, but I'm trying to leave the bulk of it white and less obvious or less bold. Hopefully this won't overtake things, but it just gives a little bit of life to these numbers here as well. Now we need to ink our elements if you've decided to do that along with me. So I'm going to do this here. And I just used my sketch there as a very rough guide. And here I'm just adding some purposely sloppy lines and coloring in certain areas a little darker to indicate things in the background. I'm not worried about details and accuracy of representation here. I just want to give the impression of a bundle of corn stalks or something like that sitting there in the background. And we can shade this either with our ink pens or we can shade it with graphite. So you can be the judge there, but this piece I'm just adding some of those details just to give it that sense like that, and I think I'll add some of the shading with the actual graphite. So here we're going to get this skull drawn in the best we can. Again, not worrying about perfection of these or super anatomical accuracy, but just want to convey this image that will be immediately recognizable, even though we're not worried about those ultra precision types of things. Because we're looking at this skull at a slight angle, this eye here on the left, what would be the right eye of the skull, is smaller and covers less area. That's if you're wondering why I did it that way. It's because we're looking at this shape in an angle. We're making it a little bit cartoony too, so that's okay. You may think, well, why would I want a skull in the midst of all my cool tangles, which probably aren't going to be very macabre? Well, maybe you don't want that. I just love the opportunity every year at Halloween time to do drawings and artwork that have these elements in, and it just seems more widely accepted by folks, and I just find it a fun opportunity to take advantage of that. You may or may not want that opportunity, and that's okay too. Maybe you want to draw some more corn husks or other kinds of vegetables or something over here that you can use to convey that October or fall sense of things. So, and that's totally fine. There we go. So we've got our nameplate, but now I want to separate this nameplate a little bit from everything else that's going to be going on during the drawings. So I'm going to just aura this whole piece with some kind of natural looking line that just separates it or segregates it from the rest of the tangles that we'll be drawing. So I'm just going to follow this general outline here. Not worrying about tucking in every little nook and cranny, but just following this general pattern so that we've got some kind of a separation or barrier that we can use for the rest of our month's tangles. So like that. And now I think I'll do one additional aura a little closer to that. So that just gives us a little bit of titling and identification of what's going on here on this page. Now we can also shade this, like I said. So I know this is almost a drawing in and of itself here for our preparation. And that's why we're doing it as a separate video. If you don't want to do this, if you feel that this is not your style, not something you want to do for your Inktober, that's okay. You can just ignore it altogether and use tiles if you want to, or whatever you feel is going to convey your artistic sense that you're going for this Inktober. But I like to celebrate the fun parts of Halloween and the whole fall season and so on, so I like to take advantage of those opportunities to dabble, like I said earlier, and to just engage some of this different kinds of creativity. So I'll still do all my tangles, and I'll do them in the way that best suits the tangle, or at least I'll try to, but I'm going to also have fun with these other elements as well. Just going over these areas here on the pumpkin with a little bit darker pencil. I wanted to have more tonal variety on there. Usually a shadow tone like that isn't just one tone, and so when it looks that way it kind of looks fake to me or doesn't convey the sense of shape that I want it to. So I'm just adding a little bit more there. We can even add a little base shadow if we want down there along the ground line where these things are sitting. So here we've got the finished nameplate for my Inktober Tangle sheet. And as I mentioned, my wife is doing this along with us this year, and she always does with me every year. And this is her version. So she did a great job following along and creating her own version. I like the playful style of the lettering and a little bit of a curve that it has there. It just looks really, really cool. So here we go. I'll zoom out and get our side-by-side. So nice job. And hopefully you all had fun drawing along as we got our paper ready for Inktober 2025. And the next video will cover the first tangle in the process. Thanks again for joining me. Hope to see you all real soon. Until then, take care. Bye-bye now.